Welcome back to Bear Farm. We're going to do a video today where we talk about setting up tree guilds, but I thought I'd start with just a little pan across our project here. If you haven't seen any of our previous videos, we're in the process of converting pasture to food forest. This is the upper section of our 4-acre lot here on the Big Island of Hawaii. And we're going to start by using the brush cutter. We're going to give this area a haircut, feed all that lush green grass to our growing fruit trees and our support trees. So we'll be right back with an update on that, and then we'll talk about setting up tree guilds. All right, with the magic of editing, we are back here after using our brush cutter to give our food forest a haircut. You can see where we ran out of literal and metaphorical gas right there. That's okay, we'll probably come back and hit the rest of that top area tomorrow. So this took about 2 hours with our brush cutter. And this is just an integral part of converting pasture, or, you know, if you're doing a lawn, it's a similar process, to a food forest or an orchard, where we're converting all the biomass of this grass into fertilizer for our trees. And we are, by just cutting the grass, we're releasing a lot of nutrients back into the soil. Here in the tropics, a lot of nutrients are stored in the leaves of trees and the vegetation, and it's not really often stored in the soil. We get really heavy rains, and nutrients can leach out of the soil really quickly. I've talked before about how porous the soil is here. A great drainage, which has benefits, but the nutrition can just fly right out of the system in the blink of an eye. And so at this stage, where you can see most of our trees are anywhere between 3 feet, 5 feet tall. And then we've got a lot of much smaller trees that we either grew from seed or support trees in this system right now, in between some of these taller trees that you see that are, 6 inches to a foot tall. A little harder to see. But for a system that is at this stage, it's integral to come in and do this at certain times. Now, it depends. I mean, I wouldn't say, you do it once every month or once every 2 months. A lot of it depends on where you are, the climate, the seasons, rainfall. You want to try to kind of be strategic about this. So here, our goal is to try to generate a lot of biomass, fertilizer, organic mulch, essentially, for our trees right now, while we still have plentiful rains. Because when we get towards July, it's going to be hot and dry, and we want to have tons of organic material decomposed in the soil. That's going to help retain moisture in the soil and, of course, add nutrients to our plants. And then we also want a really thick layer on top of the soil to shield the soil from drying out from the hot tropical sun in the summer. And so for us, this is kind of the time of year to make hay. So yeah, I plan on probably doing this maybe one more time before the summer. It doesn't take long for the grass to jump right back up to 2 or 3 feet high when we have plentiful rains. So this is not something that, we do every week or even every month. I'd say at most maybe 4 times a year, but we try to be strategic about when we do it, because once the grass starts to dry out in the summer, probably no point in cutting it back, it will start to grow really, really slowly and then brown out. And we'll wait until we get rains again in the fall before we come back and cut it again. Okay, now that we have everything cut, obviously not behind me, but this was a plant that needed some attention. So I wanted to do a quick demonstration on how we use our mulch, our grass, and our chop and drop to feed our fruit trees. So, you know, me going through with the brush cutter, it's not just about like mowing the lawn, it's about generating fertilizer. And over time, these trees will get really big and start to shade out the grass, and we will come in and start replacing the grass with support trees that are understory, and other productive understory trees also, like coffee and things like that. So real quick, I've got some chop and drop here. If you're not familiar with that, it's just kind of a permaculture phrase where we talk about plants that produce a lot of leafy material, tender leafy material really quickly, are a really good source of fertilizer for other plants like trees and shrubs where you want them to grow woody material. And we literally just feed these trees, these plants to our trees. And so you chop and drop. This is a butterfly bush. Some of you may have a landscape version of this in your yard. This is the version that just often grows like a weed here in Hawaii. So it's not a wonderful tree. It does have little flower spikes on it. I've seen bees interested in it, but not so much butterflies. And so what I like to do is just take these and strip as much of the leafy material off as I can, and then just start kind of throwing that around my tree. This is a jabuticaba, a Brazilian tree grape. And so, you know, we'll just take a bunch of these. And again, we just strip off the leaves. You don't have to do this. It's kind of an extra step, but it just helps the stuff to break down a little bit faster. And I like to have the stuff that breaks down really fast on the very bottom layer. Another thing you can do is take your pruning shears and chop this stuff up even more. Depending on what kind of tree it is, that might be necessary. What I'm gonna do is chop these thicker pieces with my loppers here. And that's another way that you can do this whole process. There's really like not a wrong way to do this. Just kind of depends on how fast you need it to break down. But so many ways you can do that. So in this case, I just throw it on the ground and I start using my loppers to come in and chop up all that material. If you don't chop it up, it just takes longer to break down. In some cases, it can kind of throw off the balance of things a little bit, really slow down the decomposition down there at the bottom layers. And since we're trying to make fertilizer, if anything, we want to speed that up a little bit, get some nutrition to our trees. So there's quite a few plants that are really good for chop and drop, and for different reasons. We've talked about comfrey a lot on our channel. We definitely have comfrey here on the farm. And actually in part 2 of our video, we're going to be talking about propagating some comfrey and adding it to some of our other fruit tree areas. Comfrey is a particularly good chop and drop material because it makes a really long taproot. It goes way down into the soil, picks up lots of nutrients in the soil, and then drops them, or puts them in the foliage, which in this case, when you're chopping and dropping, you're adding that right to the soil layer. Other good plants are virtually anything that grows like this, where you can cut it back and it will just shoot right back up, which is the case with comfrey, by the way. A really popular chop and drop plant in warmer areas is Mexican sunflower. Now, we made the mistake early on of trying to grow Mexican sunflower from seed. So you go to the store, you buy a pack of seeds that says Mexican sunflower on it, and you get these really beautiful, like 3-4 foot tall, kind of tender shrubs with really nice orange flowers on them. We had one nearby here, but I think it's run its course.
Yeah.
They're great plants, but they are not the chop and drop type. So for chop and drop, you need this the species called Tithonia diversiflora, which as far as I know, really needs to be grown from a cutting. So it's kind of hard to get your hands on sometimes. But it's really an amazing chop and drop plant. People say that it's pound for pound equal to chicken manure in its nutrient content, particularly nitrogen. So tons of really good chop and drop plants out there. A lot of things that are a little bit weedy actually make really good chop and drop plants because they grow really fast, which means that they have, you know, powerful kind of growth enzymes in them. They take up nutrients really fast, which is what tends to make them grow really fast. You often need to get rid of them, remove them from an area, so most people have them at their disposal. So think about that next time you're just getting rid of weeds. Maybe there's a way you can put them at the bottom of a pile like this around some of your trees. And that way you're going to smother out the weed seeds and make sure that they don't regrow. As long as it's not something that has a really, what do you call it, like a runner type of root. That would be like a lot of types of grasses have runner roots, like crabgrass, because that stuff will just re-sprout right underneath your tree. So nothing like that, but anything that's got seeds should be fine. Because next what you're going to do is take some of this chopped grass. Now this could be lawn clippings. It could be a project like we're doing where we're cutting down our pasture to convert it to a food forest. But if you've got these green grass clippings, this is a great material as a fertilizer. Tons of nitrogen in there. A few other nutrients, but a lot of nitrogen when it's green. And so take that and we put it on top of that butterfly bush that we did the chop and drop with. And then finally we're going to take some brown straw. So this could just be like older grass that you've cut that's gone brown. If you have access to straw, that'll work. But what you want to do is cover up that green, and that way all those nutrients that are down there in that grass will decompose into the soil, and they won't leach out into the atmosphere. Nitrogen, a lot of it escapes into our atmosphere. I believe our atmosphere is mostly nitrogen. So in the end, we're probably going to pile a little bit more of the brown straw on top of this and really smother it down in there to create a really heavy mulch. Suppresses weeds, retains moisture, adds organic material to the soil, adds macronutrients, adds micronutrients, trace elements, all this stuff. So this is probably all you need to do in a lot of cases to start a food forest when you plant your trees, to take care of them like this. But when they're young, it can be really helpful to supplement with some extra fertilizers. I highly recommend organic fertilizers, things that we use here just when our trees are young like this to try to really get them off to a good start is kelp extract, fish oil. We do use diluted urine. So all those things make really good fertilizers in moderation to get your trees off to a really good start. But this is kind of the key to that long-term success and health for your food forest, is to get your trees to convert the area around the base of them into a really nice organic rich, fungal rich environment. So if we come back here, it doesn't take long here, maybe a couple weeks, and peel this back, we should see a lot of fungal hyphae, the little mycorrhizal, the white hairs of fungus that are starting to spread underneath there. And that's the stuff that really not only accelerates decomposition, but secretes sugars and enzymes that makes the nutrients in the soil way more available to the plants. So that's that's like the ecosystem that we want to create in the soil, especially if you're doing a project like this where you're converting a lawn or a pasture to a forest environment. You're trying to switch it over from a bacterial dominant ecosystem to a fungal dominant ecosystem. And this is by far the best way to do that. So we appreciate you joining us and checking out what we're doing here to take care of our trees. Tune in for the next part. We're going to talk about building out guilds for these trees. So this is kind of like the next step. Once you've got your tree and you've got it fed and mulched and everything, you want to put in some other plants around that tree that are going to support the long-term health of that tree and really start to turn this into a food forest, as opposed to just an orchard or a single fruit tree. That really starts to make the connections between the plants that will start to help it manage itself. All right, well, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you here again soon at Dyna Bear Farm. Aloha.